The bargain. No sister should pay. The night Lena Varelli discovered her father had sold her sister like livestock, she made a choice that would reshape the criminal underworld forever. In the shadowed mansions of America's most ruthless crime families, daughters aren't loved, they're leveraged. Mia was innocent, barely 19, promised to a monster who collected broken women like trophies. Lena had 72 hours to stop it. What she did next wasn't heroic. It was calculated, dangerous, and irreversible. She walked into her father's office and offered herself instead. If you want to see how far a sister's love can reach into the darkness, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city below so I can see how far Lena's story travels across the world. The Varelli mansion sat like a monument to blood money on the outskirts of Chicago, its limestone walls holding secrets that would never see daylight. Inside, beneath crystal chandeliers that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime, Lena Varelli stood outside her father's study with her hand pressed against the mahogany door, listening to him auction off her sister's future. "The Calabrese boy will take her," Dominic Varelli's voice carried through the wood, thick with cigar smoke and satisfaction. "He's agreed to our terms. The marriage happens in 3 months." Lena's breath caught. Marco Calabrese. She knew that name, had heard the whispers that followed it through Chicago's underworld like a curse. A man who'd put 2 previous wives in the ground before their 30th birthdays. A man whose appetites ran dark enough that even hardened criminals wouldn't speak of them aloud. And her father was giving him Mia. Her hand trembled against the door. 26 years of being Dominic Varelli's daughter had taught Lena exactly what she was worth in his eyes. Less than his reputation, less than his alliances, certainly less than his son's. She was the eldest daughter, the one who'd learned to be invisible, to move through her father's world like smoke. Useful enough to keep around, forgettable enough to ignore. But Mia was different. Mia still laughed. Mia still believed their father might love them if they were good enough, quiet enough, perfect enough. At 19, Mia hadn't yet learned that Dominic Varelli's children were just another form of currency, to be spent when the price was right. The study door opened before Lena could move away. Her father's consigliere, Vincent, stepped out, his weathered face carefully neutral as his eyes swept over her. "Miss Varelli," he nodded once. "Your father's busy. I need to speak with him." "Not now." Vincent moved to close the door. Lena's hand shot out, stopping it. Something in her expression made Vincent pause. Maybe he saw the calculation there, the cold mathematics of a woman who'd finally run out of ways to stay silent. "It's about Mia's engagement," Lena said quietly. "He'll want to hear this." Vincent studied her for a long moment, then stepped aside. 5 minutes. The study smelled like power and tobacco, all dark wood and leather chairs that had witnessed decades of terrible decisions. Dominic Varelli sat behind his desk like a king on a throne, his silver hair perfectly groomed, his suit tailored to hide the bulk of a man who'd spent 30 years ruling Chicago's underworld through fear and precision. He didn't look up when Lena entered. "What do you want?" "I want to talk about Mia's marriage. It's done. Calabrese accepted our terms." He signed something on his desk, still not looking at her. "The alliance will strengthen our position in the Northwest Territories. Your sister should be grateful." Grateful. The word tasted like poison. Lena moved closer to the desk, her footsteps silent on the Persian rug. "Marco Calabrese is a monster. Marco Calabrese is a valuable ally." Now Dominic looked up, his eyes cold and flat as a shark's. "This family doesn't survive on sentiment, Lena. It survives on strategic marriages, useful alliances, and knowing when to capitalize on our assets." Our assets. That's what Mia was to him. What Lena herself had always been. "She's 19 years old. She's a Varelli. She'll do her duty." Dominic returned his attention to his paperwork, dismissing her. "You're dismissed." Lena didn't move. In her mind, she was calculating odds, measuring risks, counting the cost of what she was about to do. The smart play was to walk away, to accept that this was how their world worked. Daughters were traded like stocks, married off to seal deals and settle debts. Fighting it was pointless. But Lena had never been good at making the smart play when it came to her sister. "What if there was a better alliance?" she heard herself say. Dominic's pen stilled. "What?" The Calabrese marriage gives you the Northwest Territories, but it ties you to a family with a dying patriarch and 3 sons who will be at war with each other within a year of his death. Lena kept her voice steady, professional, the way she'd heard her father's men speak when they were negotiating. It's a short-term gain for long-term instability. And you're suddenly a strategist? Dominic's voice carried an edge of mockery, but he was listening. That was something. I'm observant. I've spent my whole life watching you build this empire. Lena moved closer, placing her hands on his desk. The Morettis sent a representative to the Winter Gala last month, Adrian Moretti himself. Her father's eyes narrowed. The Morettis aren't looking for Chicago alliances. They weren't. But Adrian's consolidating power, absorbing the Eastern families, building something bigger than territory. Lena had spent weeks gathering this information, piecing together intelligence from overheard conversations and carefully cultivated sources. He's looking to expand west. A marriage alliance with the Virellis would give him legitimacy in Chicago without the cost of a war. And what does this have to do with your sister? This was it. The moment where Lena either saved Mia or destroyed herself trying. Offer him me instead. The silence that followed was absolute. Dominic stared at her like he'd never seen her before, his expression cycling through surprise, calculation, and something that might have been respect in a man capable of that emotion. You? He leaned back in his chair, studying her. Adrian Moretti is the most dangerous man on the eastern seaboard. He's built an empire on intelligence and brutality. Why would I waste him on you when I could offer him Mia? The words hit like a slap, but Lena had expected them. In her father's world, Mia's youth and innocence made her valuable. Lena's intelligence and observational skills made her threatening. Because Mia won't survive him, Lena said flatly. She's too gentle, too trusting. She'd break within a year and you'd lose the alliance and your daughter. But I won't break. She straightened, meeting her father's eyes. I know this world. I understand the game. I can be useful to Moretti in ways Mia never could. And that makes me worth more to your alliance. Dominic was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming on the desk. Lena could see him calculating, measuring the value of each daughter against his ambitions. Adrian Moretti doesn't want a wife, he finally said. He wants power. Then give him both. Lena forced confidence into her voice. Offer him a bride who can think, who can navigate political waters, who won't be a liability. Offer him a partner, not a prisoner. And if he refuses? Then you've lost nothing. Marry Mia to Calabrese, and I'll disappear. I won't fight it. The lie came easily. Lena would fight until her last breath, but her father didn't need to know that. Dominic studied her for what felt like an eternity. Then, slowly, he smiled. And it was the coldest thing Lena had ever seen. You're more like me than I thought, he said. Ruthless enough to sacrifice yourself for strategy. I can work with that. He reached for his phone. I'll reach out to Moretti's people, set up a meeting. But Lena, if this fails, if you embarrass this family or cost me this alliance, there won't be a place in this world where you can hide from me. I understand. Good. Get out. Lena walked out of that study with her heart pounding and her hands steady, knowing she'd just traded one prison for another. But at least this prison would be her choice. At least Mia would be safe. She found her sister in the garden, sitting beneath the wisteria with a book in her lap, sunlight turning her dark hair to silk. Mia looked up with a smile that still believed the world could be kind. Lena, I was wondering where you'd gone. Mia closed her book. Father's assistant said he wanted to see me later. Do you know what it's about? Lena sat beside her sister, memorizing this moment. Mia's innocence, her hope, the last afternoon before everything changed. It's about your future. My future? Mia's smile widened. Is he finally going to let me go to university? I've been working on my application. No, sweetheart. Lena took her sister's hand. It's about marriage. The hope drained from Mia's face. Marriage? But I'm only 19. I thought I had more time. You do. Lena squeezed her hand. I'm taking care of it. What do you mean? I mean you're not getting married. Not to anyone father chooses. Not until you're ready. Lena pulled Mia close, holding her tight. I promise you, Mia, you're going to have the life you want. You're going to be free. Mia pulled back, her dark eyes searching Lena's face. What did you do? What I had to. Lena, trust me. Lena forced a smile. When have I ever let you down? The meeting with the Morettis was set for the following week at a neutral location, a private room in one of Chicago's oldest hotels, the kind of place where the staff knew not to remember faces or ask questions. Lena spent those 7 days preparing like she was going to war, learning everything she could about Adrian Moretti. The intelligence painted a picture of a man who'd taken over his father's organization at 23 and transformed it into something unprecedented. Where other crime families ruled through violence and fear, Adrian built his empire on information, strategic alliances, and surgical precision. He was 31 now, controlled 6 states' worth of territory, and had a reputation for being utterly impossible to read. Dangerous, in other words. Possibly more dangerous than her father. But dangerous men could be navigated if you were smart enough, careful enough, ruthless enough. The night before the meeting, Lena stood in front of her mirror and practiced being someone valuable. She'd chosen her clothing carefully, a black dress that was elegant without being provocative, professional without being masculine. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple style that wouldn't distract. No jewelry except the thin gold watch her mother had given her before cancer had taken her 10 years ago. In the mirror, she looked like what she needed to be. A woman who could survive in the shadows of powerful men, who could be useful without being threatening, who could smile while calculating exactly how to turn any situation to her advantage. Her father's daughter in all the ways that mattered. The hotel's private room was smaller than Lena expected, decorated in tasteful neutrals that did nothing to soften the tension crackling through the air. Her father arrived first, flanked by Vincent and 2 other men whose job was to look intimidating. Dominic barely glanced at Lena before taking his position at the head of the table. "Remember," he said quietly, "you're representing this family. Don't embarrass me." Lena nodded, taking her seat to his right. Her heart was hammering, but her hands were steady in her lap. She'd learned years ago how to hide fear behind a mask of calm. The door opened. Adrian Moretti entered like he owned the room, and perhaps he did. Power followed him like a second shadow, something in the way he moved, the way the air seemed to shift around him. He was taller than Lena expected, lean and broad-shouldered in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, dark hair, dark eyes that swept the room with the kind of precision that missed nothing. Behind him came 2 men, both armed, both alert, both watching Dominic's guards with the focus of soldiers in enemy territory. "Varelli." Adrian's voice was smooth, controlled, with just enough edge to remind everyone present that he'd built his empire on being smarter than his enemies. He took the seat across from Dominic without waiting for an invitation. "You said you had a proposal worth my time." "I do." Dominic gestured to Lena. "My daughter, Lena. I believe you met briefly at the Winter Gala." Adrian's eyes shifted to Lena, and she felt the weight of his assessment like a physical thing. This was a man who made his living reading people, who'd survived in their world by knowing exactly when someone was lying, when they were weak, when they could be used. Lena met his gaze steadily, letting him look. "I remember," Adrian said finally. His attention returned to Dominic. "You're offering me a marriage alliance. I'm offering you Chicago. My daughter comes with territory, connections, and legitimacy that would take you years to build otherwise." Dominic leaned back, confident. "The Varellis have roots in this city going back 3 generations. An alliance through marriage gives you everything you need to expand west without a war." "I already have what I need," Adrian said mildly. "Territory I can take, connections I can buy." "What makes you think I want a wife?" "Because power without legitimacy is just violence, and violence is expensive." This time it was Lena who spoke, her voice clear and calm in the charged silence. "You've built something different from the old families. An organization based on strategy and information rather than brute force. But the traditional families still see you as an outsider, a young upstart who got lucky. A marriage alliance with one of Chicago's founding families changes that narrative." Adrian's focus shifted entirely to her, and Lena forced herself to hold still under that dark, measuring gaze. "You've thought about this," he said. "I have. And what do you get out of this arrangement?" The question caught her off guard. In her world, no one asked what women wanted. They were told what they would accept. Lena considered lying, then decided against it. Something told her Adrian Moretti would spot a lie from across the room. "Safety," she said simply. "For my sister, for myself. A position where I'm valued for more than my last name." Valued. Adrian's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes, interest maybe, or calculation. That's an interesting word choice. It's an honest one. Dominic cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with being sidelined in his own negotiation. Lena knows this city, knows the families, knows how to move in our world without causing problems. She's not some naive girl who'll be a liability. She's an asset. An asset. Adrian repeated the word like he was testing its weight. Then, unexpectedly, he stood. I'll need to speak with your daughter, alone. The room went very still. Dominic's jaw tightened and Vincent's hand moved fractionally toward his weapon. That's not how this works, Dominic said carefully. It's how I work. Adrian's voice carried no threat, no aggression, just absolute certainty. If I'm considering a marriage alliance, I need to know who I'm actually allying with. 5 minutes. Your men can wait outside the door if it makes you feel better. It was a power play, a way of establishing that Adrian Moretti didn't follow other people's rules. Lena could see her father calculating the risks, weighing his need for this alliance against his pride. Fine, Dominic finally said. He stood, gesturing to his men. 5 minutes. But Lena, be smart. Then they were gone, and Lena was alone with the most dangerous man in the Eastern Territories. Adrian didn't speak immediately. He moved to the window, looking out over Chicago's skyline with his hands in his pockets, relaxed in a way that somehow made him seem more threatening rather than less. Your father's a piece of work, he said conversationally. Lena didn't know how to respond to that, so she stayed silent. He tried to sell me your sister first, Adrian continued, still not looking at her. 3 weeks ago. Very enthusiastic about her youth and beauty, very clear that she'd be obedient and grateful. When I declined, he seemed genuinely surprised. Lena's heart stopped. You knew about Mia. I make it my business to know everything. Now Adrian turned, leaning against the window frame. So when Dominic Varelli suddenly offers me his other daughter, his older, smarter, less conventionally valuable daughter, I have to wonder what changed. He knew. Somehow he knew exactly what Lena had done. I changed his mind, Lena said carefully, by offering yourself instead. It wasn't a question. Why? Because Mia deserves better than this world. And you don't? The question hit harder than Lena expected. She thought about lying again, about giving him the answer he probably expected, that she was resigned to her fate, that she accepted this was how their world worked. Instead, she told the truth. I don't know what I deserve, she said quietly, but I know what I can survive. And I can survive you. Mia couldn't. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those dark, unreadable eyes. You're afraid of me. I'd be stupid not to be. But you're sitting here anyway, offering yourself as a strategic sacrifice for a sister who might not even know what you've done. He moved closer, each step measured and deliberate. That's either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Maybe both. The corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile, but something close. Your father thinks you'll be useful to me. Connections, legitimacy, someone who knows how to navigate Chicago's power structures. He stopped a few feet away from her chair. But what do you think you bring to this arrangement, Lena? This was a test. Lena could feel it, the weight of his attention focused entirely on her answer. She could be modest, downplay her value, play the role of the grateful daughter accepting her fate. Or she could be honest. I'm smart, she said, meeting his eyes. Smarter than my father realizes, smarter than most of his men. I've spent my entire life watching how this world works, learning the games, understanding the players. I know every family in Chicago, every alliance, every grudge, every weakness. She stood, refusing to let him tower over her. You want to expand west? I can tell you exactly who to approach, who to avoid, who can be bought, and who needs to be threatened. I can navigate social situations that would be minefields for an outsider. I can be your eyes and ears in places you can't go. A spy. A partner, Lena corrected. Someone invested in your success because it's also my survival. Someone who won't lie to you because I'm smart enough to know that lying to you would be suicide. She took a breath. I'm not my sister. I won't smile and nod and be decorative, but I can be valuable. And in our world, that's worth more than beauty. Silence stretched between them. Adrian's expression was unreadable, his dark eyes searching her face for something Lena couldn't identify. You're right, he finally said. You are smarter than your father realizes. He moved back to the table, resting his hands on the back of a chair. I'm going to tell you something, Lena, and I want you to listen carefully. I don't need a wife. I don't need your father's territory or his connections. I could take Chicago in 6 months if I wanted to, and the only thing stopping me is that it's not worth the resources. Lena's stomach dropped. If Adrian didn't need this alliance, but, he continued, I am interested in building something different, something that's not just about territory and violence. And for that, I might need someone who thinks strategically, who can see 3 moves ahead, who won't break under pressure. He looked at her directly. Someone like you. What are you saying? I'm saying I'll agree to this marriage, but not as your father proposed it. Adrian's voice was calm, measured, completely serious. This won't be a traditional arrangement where you're my property or my decoration. If we do this, we do it as a genuine alliance. You bring your intelligence and knowledge. I bring protection and power. We build something together or we don't do it at all. Lena stared at him, trying to process what he was offering. In her world, marriages were transactions where women were bought and sold. Adrian was proposing something that sounded almost like partnership. Why? She asked. You could have anyone. Why would you choose an arrangement that gives me actual power? Because I don't want just anyone. Adrian's expression was completely serious. I want someone smart enough to be useful, ruthless enough to survive, and honest enough to tell me the truth even when it's uncomfortable. From what I've seen in the last 5 minutes, you're all 3. He paused. But I'm also going to give you something your father never has. A choice. A choice? We can do this marriage alliance on terms that benefit us both, or you can walk away. I'll still decline your father's offers, and you can find another way to protect your sister. Adrian pulled out the chair, sitting down. But if you choose this, Lena, I need you to understand what you're choosing. I'm not a kind man. I'm not a safe man. The world I operate in is violent and unforgiving, and being associated with me will paint a target on your back. So choose carefully. Lena's mind was racing. This wasn't what she'd expected. Not the offer, not the choice, not the strange, terrifying possibility that this arrangement might be something other than a slow death. But she'd learned long ago to be suspicious of things that seemed too good to be true. What do you really want from me? She asked quietly. Adrian smiled then, a real smile, sharp and dangerous and somehow honest. The same thing you want from me. Survival. Power. A way to build something that's ours instead of theirs. He leaned forward slightly. Your father sees you as a bargaining chip. I see you as a potential ally. The question is, which do you see yourself as? Lena thought about Mia, safe and free. She thought about her father's cold calculation, about being invisible for 26 years, about the life she'd been offered and the life she might choose. She thought about standing across from the most dangerous man she'd ever met and being offered not ownership, but partnership. It was probably a trap, probably a manipulation, probably another form of cage, but it was the only door that led somewhere other than darkness. I choose the alliance, Lena said, on your terms. Then let's discuss specifics. Adrian gestured to the chair across from him. Because if we're doing this, we're doing it right. They spent the next hour negotiating like business partners, not like a crime boss and his prospective bride. Adrian laid out his expectations clearly. Lena would maintain her connections in Chicago, serve as his advisor on Western family politics, and represent his interests in social situations where his presence would be too threatening. In exchange, she'd have autonomy over her own life, access to his resources and protection, and a genuine voice in their decisions. It was more than Lena had ever imagined having. It was also terrifying in its implications. This wasn't a figurehead position where she could fade into the background. Adrian was offering her real power, which meant real responsibility, which meant real danger. When her father and his men returned, they found Lena and Adrian discussing Chicago's family territories like colleagues planning a business expansion. We have an agreement, Adrian announced, standing. The marriage alliance moves forward. I'll have my lawyers draw up a contract outlining the specific terms of our arrangement. Dominic's eyes narrowed. What specific terms? The ones your daughter and I have negotiated. Adrian's voice carried a note of finality that suggested the topic wasn't open for discussion. Lena has agreed to serve as my advisor and representative in Chicago. In exchange, she'll have full partnership status in any ventures we undertake together, along with appropriate financial and security provisions. Partnership status? Dominic's face was reddening. She's supposed to be your wife, not your business partner. She'll be both. Adrian moved toward the door, his men falling in behind him. The contract will be delivered by the end of the week. I suggest you read it carefully before you have any objections. He paused at the door, looking back at Lena. I'll send a car for you Friday evening. We have a charity gala to attend. Your first public appearance as my fiancé. Wear something appropriate. Then he was gone, leaving Lena alone with her father's fury. What did you do? Dominic hissed the moment the door closed. Partnership status. Financial provisions? You were supposed to be submissive, grateful, not negotiate like you have any value. I have exactly as much value as Adrian Moretti thinks I do, Lena said calmly, even though her heart was pounding. And apparently, he thinks I'm worth more than you ever did. Her father's hand rose, and for a moment Lena thought he might actually hit her. But Vincent stepped forward, his voice low and urgent. Boss, the Moretti contract will be legally binding. If you touch her now, you risk the entire alliance. Dominic's hand lowered slowly, but his eyes promised violence. You think you're clever, offering yourself to the most dangerous man on the eastern seaboard. But you've made a mistake, Lena. Adrian Moretti doesn't want a partner. He wants control. And when he's done using you, when you've served your purpose, he'll discard you like everyone else who's ever trusted him. Maybe, Lena said quietly, but at least I'll have chosen it. She walked out of that hotel room with her head high and her hands steady, knowing she'd just irrevocably changed her life. There was no going back now, no safety net, no escape route. She'd offered herself to a man who could destroy her with a word, all to save a sister who might never know what she'd sacrificed. That night, Lena found Mia in her room, packing a suitcase. Where are you going? Lena asked from the doorway. Mia looked up, her eyes red from crying. Father told me about Marco Calabrese, about the marriage. I won't. Her voice broke. I'm leaving. Tonight. I'll go somewhere he can't find me. Mia, stop. Lena crossed the room, catching her sister's hands. You're not marrying Marco Calabrese. But Father said Father was wrong. The arrangement changed. Lena pulled Mia down to sit on the bed. I'm marrying Adrian Moretti instead. The color drained from Mia's face. Adrian Moretti? Lena, no. He's even more dangerous than Calabrese. Everyone says he's brilliant and ruthless and completely unpredictable. I know what everyone says. Then why would you... Understanding dawned in Mia's eyes, followed by horror. You're taking my place. Again. Just like when we were kids, when you'd take the blame for things I did, when you'd... She grabbed Lena's shoulders. I'm not a child anymore. You can't keep sacrificing yourself for me. I'm not sacrificing anything, Lena lied gently. I'm making a strategic choice. Adrian Moretti is dangerous, yes. But he's also intelligent, reasonable. He's given me terms that actually make this bearable. Terms? Mia's laugh was bitter. Lena, he's a crime boss. Whatever he promised you is more than I'd get from anyone else Father chose. Lena squeezed her sister's hands. Mia, listen to me. This is done. The agreement's been made. And honestly, I think I might actually survive this. Maybe even thrive. And if you don't? If he turns out to be as terrible as everyone says? Lena thought about Adrian's dark eyes, about the strange conversation where he'd offered her choice instead of commands, about the contract promising partnership instead of ownership. Then I'll handle it, she said with more confidence than she felt. But at least you'll be free. That's what matters. Mia pulled her into a fierce hug, and Lena held her sister tight, memorizing this moment. The last time she could be just Lena, just a sister, before she became Adrian Moretti's wife, and everything that entailed. Promise me something, Mia whispered against her shoulder. Promise me you'll actually try to be happy, not just survive. Be happy. Lena wanted to promise, wanted to believe that happiness was possible in an arrangement built on strategy and survival, but she'd never been good at lying to her sister. I promise I'll try, she said instead. The contract arrived 3 days later, delivered by a lawyer in an expensive suit who waited while Dominic read through its terms. Lena watched her father's face cycle through rage, disbelief, and grudging respect as he absorbed exactly what Adrian had agreed to. financial independence, security provisions, veto power over any decisions that directly affected her, a prenuptial agreement that protected her assets in the event of divorce or death. He's giving you everything, Dominic said finally, his voice flat with disbelief. Everything you'd never get in a traditional arrangement. Yes, Lena said simply. Why? It was the same question Lena kept asking herself. Why would Adrian Moretti, who could have any arrangement he wanted, choose to give her actual power? Because he thinks I'm worth it, she said, and tried to believe it was true. The gala on Friday night was Lena's introduction to Adrian's world, and it was nothing like the function she'd attended with her father. This wasn't Chicago's old money and established families. This was new power, dangerous power, people who'd built empires on intelligence and ruthlessness rather than inherited territory. Adrian's driver picked her up at 8, and Lena spent the car ride practicing the mask she'd need to wear. Confident but not arrogant. Intelligent but not threatening. Worthy of standing beside the most powerful man in the room. Adrian was waiting for her at the gala entrance, devastating in a black tuxedo that made his dark eyes seem even more intense. He offered his arm without comment, and Lena took it, letting him guide her into a ballroom full of people who would be measuring her worth with every glance. Nervous? He asked quietly as they moved through the crowd. Terrified, Lena admitted. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Adrian nodded to a group of well-dressed men who watched them with undisguised interest. The tall one is Senator Morrison, owned by the Calabrese family. The woman in red is Victoria Chen, runs the Eastern Gambling Territories. The man by the bar is my second-in-command, Marcus. He'll want to meet you. You're testing me, Lena realized. Seeing if I can navigate this. I'm seeing if you can do what you claimed. Be my eyes and ears where I can't go. Adrian's voice was neutral, giving nothing away. Prove you're as valuable as you said. It was a challenge, and Lena had never been good at backing down from challenges. She spent the next hour moving through that ballroom like she'd been born to it, making connections, gathering information, reading the power dynamics that Adrian had set her loose to observe. She smiled at the right people, asked the right questions, and watched everything with the careful attention that had kept her alive in her father's house. And all the while, she felt Adrian's dark eyes tracking her progress, measuring, evaluating, seeing exactly what she was worth. When they finally left 3 hours later, Lena was exhausted but exhilarated. She'd survived. More than that, she'd succeeded. Well? She asked as Adrian's driver pulled away from the curb. Did I pass your test? Adrian was quiet for a moment, looking out at Chicago's lights. Then he turned to her and something in his expression had shifted. Approval, maybe, or the beginning of respect. You noticed that Morrison and Chen arrived together but left separately, he said. You picked up on the tension between my security chief and Marcus. You identified 3 people who were watching us too carefully and 2 who were deliberately avoiding eye contact. He leaned back against the seat. And you did it all while making it look effortless. So I passed? You exceeded expectations. Adrian's smile was sharp. Which means we might actually make this work, Lena Virelli. Welcome to the partnership. As the car carried them through the city that would soon be theirs to navigate together, Lena realized she'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. She wasn't her father's daughter anymore. Wasn't the invisible girl who'd spent her life in the shadows. She was Adrian Moretti's future wife, his ally, his partner, and that made her one of the most dangerous women in America. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, for the first time in her life, Lena felt something that might have been power settling over her shoulders like a cloak. She'd made her choice. Now she'd live with the consequences, whatever they might be. The wedding happened faster than Lena expected. 3 weeks after that first gala, in a private ceremony that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with consolidating power. The venue was one of Chicago's historic mansions, transformed into something elegant and austere, filled with people who came to witness an alliance rather than celebrate a marriage. Lena stood in the bridal suite, staring at her reflection in a dress that cost more than most people's cars. White silk, perfectly tailored, elegant without being romantic. She looked like exactly what she was, a strategic acquisition dressed up in wedding clothes. You look beautiful, Mia whispered, adjusting Lena's veil with trembling hands. Her sister had been crying on and off for days, guilt and gratitude warring in her eyes every time she looked at Lena. I look expensive, Lena corrected gently. There's a difference. Lena, don't. Lena turned, catching Mia's hands. We've been over this. I chose this. And I'm going to be fine. You're marrying a man you barely know. I'm marrying a man who's given me more consideration in 3 weeks than father gave me in 26 years. Lena squeezed her sister's fingers. Stop worrying about me. You're free now. That's what matters. A knock at the door interrupted them. Vincent stepped inside, his weathered face unreadable as always. It's time, Miss Varelli. Your father's waiting to walk you down. Of course he was. Dominic Varelli wouldn't miss the opportunity to publicly hand over his daughter to the most powerful man on the eastern seaboard, to be seen as the architect of this strategic alliance. Never mind that Lena had orchestrated the entire thing to save her sister. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of traditional words spoken without traditional meaning. Lena walked down the aisle on her father's arm, acutely aware that this was the last time she'd be just a Varelli daughter. After today, she'd be Adrian Moretti's wife, with all the danger and possibility that entailed. Adrian stood at the altar in a black suit that made him look like exactly what he was, lethal elegance wrapped in perfect control. His dark eyes tracked Lena's approach with the same measuring intensity she'd come to recognize, assessing, calculating, seeing things she wasn't sure she wanted him to see. When Dominic placed Lena's hand in Adrian's, his grip was cold and impersonal. Take care of my investment, he murmured, just loud enough for Adrian to hear. She's not an investment, Adrian replied quietly, his voice carrying an edge that made Dominic's jaw tighten. She's my wife. There's a difference. Then the officiant was speaking, and Lena was repeating vows that meant nothing and everything, promising loyalty to a man she'd known for 3 weeks, binding herself to someone who could destroy her with a word. I do, she heard herself say, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her stomach. Adrian's response was equally calm, equally controlled. I do. The ring he slid onto her finger was simple platinum, elegant without being ostentatious. Exactly the kind of choice she was learning to expect from him. Nothing excessive, nothing that drew unnecessary attention, just quiet, understated power. When Adrian kissed her to seal their marriage, it was brief and professional, a gesture for the audience rather than anything personal. But Lena felt the promise in it anyway. This was real now, legal, binding. She'd just married the most dangerous man she'd ever met, and there was no going back. The reception was an exercise in political theater. Lena moved through the crowd on Adrian's arm, smiling at the right people, accepting congratulations from families who were calculating exactly how this marriage shifted the balance of power. She could feel them measuring her worth, wondering if she was a weakness Adrian had acquired or a weapon he'd gained. You're doing well, Adrian murmured during a rare moment alone. They stood at the edge of the ballroom, champagne glasses in hand, watching the carefully orchestrated chaos. Convincing performance. It's not a performance. Everything's a performance in our world. He took a sip of his champagne, his eyes tracking someone across the room. But you're better at it than most. Senator Morrison's wife has been trying to get information out of you for the past 20 minutes, and you've given her absolutely nothing useful while making her feel heard. Lena glanced at the woman in question, who was now talking animatedly with a group of political wives. She wanted to know if you were planning to make a move on the Northern Territories. I told her you were focused on consolidating your Eastern holdings and that expansion wasn't a priority. Which is exactly what I would have told her. Adrian's smile was slight but genuine. You're a natural at this. I've been watching my father play these games my entire life. But you're better at it than he is, less obvious, more subtle. Adrian set down his glass. Dominic Varelli rules through intimidation. You could rule through influence. That's considerably more dangerous. The observation sent an unexpected thrill through Lena. No one had ever told her she was dangerous before. In her father's house, she'd been invisible, forgettable, safe only because no one noticed her. But Adrian noticed everything. We should dance, he said, offering his hand. People will expect it. The ballroom floor cleared as they moved to the center, and Lena was aware of every eye tracking their movement. This was their first public dance as husband and wife, another performance for an audience that would dissect every gesture for meaning. Adrian's hand settled at her waist, warmed through the silk of her dress. His other hand took hers with surprising gentleness, and then they were moving, gliding across the floor in a waltz that looked effortless. Nervous? He asked quietly, echoing his question from that first gala. Should I be? Probably. You just married me. That makes you a target for every enemy I've made and every rival who thinks you might be a weakness. Am I? A weakness? Adrian's dark eyes met hers directly. That depends entirely on you. It wasn't reassuring, but it was honest. Lena was learning that Adrian didn't deal in comforting lies. He dealt in brutal truths and expected her to handle them. Then I suppose I'll have to make sure I'm a strength instead, she said. Something flickered in his expression. Approval, maybe, or the beginning of respect. Yes, I suppose you will. The rest of the reception passed in a blur of political conversations and strategic alliances, of Lena being introduced to Adrian's inner circle and quietly assessed by men who'd built their lives on violence and calculation. By the time they finally left, Lena was exhausted from maintaining her mask, from being constantly watched and evaluated. Adrian's driver took them to his home, Lena's home now, she supposed, a converted warehouse in one of Chicago's redeveloped industrial districts. From the outside, it looked stark and modern, all clean lines and security measures. Inside, it was surprisingly livable, decorated in minimalist style that somehow managed to feel comfortable rather than cold. The master suite is upstairs, Adrian said, shrugging out of his jacket. Your things were moved in yesterday. You have your own space, bedroom, office, whatever you need. We can discuss the specific arrangements later. Lena blinked. My own bedroom? Did you think I'd expect you to share mine? Adrian loosened his tie, and for the first time that day he looked almost relaxed. Lena, this is a business arrangement that happens to include a marriage certificate. I'm not going to demand traditional marital rights as if you're my property. But people will expect, so let them expect. What happens behind closed doors is our business, not theirs. He moved to the bar, pouring 2 glasses of whiskey. We're partners, remember? That means you get privacy, autonomy, and the right to set your own boundaries. He handed her a glass and Lena took it with trembling fingers. She'd prepared herself for so many versions of this night, for demands, for expectations, for having to navigate unwanted intimacy while protecting what little power she had. She hadn't prepared for Adrian to simply give her space without asking for anything in return. Why are you doing this? She asked quietly. Really? Why offer me partnership instead of ownership? Adrian was silent for a long moment, studying his whiskey like it held answers. Because I watched my mother spend 20 years as my father's property, he finally said. Watched her become smaller every year, watched the light go out of her eyes until there was nothing left but survival. When she finally died, it was almost a relief. He looked up, meeting Lena's eyes. I swore I'd never do that to anyone. If I was going to marry, it would be someone who chose to be there, who had actual power, who could walk away if they wanted. Can I? Walk away? The marriage contract has a dissolution clause. If you want out after a year, you can leave with financial security and my protection. No strings, no revenge, no making you disappear in the night. Adrian's voice was completely serious. I meant what I said, Lena. This only works if you choose it. Lena sank into one of the leather chairs, trying to process everything. Her father had sold her like property. Adrian was offering her freedom. The cognitive dissonance was making her head spin. What do you actually want from me? She asked. Besides the political connections and social navigation. Honesty. Loyalty as long as this arrangement lasts. Your intelligence applied to problems I can't solve alone. Adrian sat across from her, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp. And eventually, maybe trust, though I realize that's asking a lot. You want me to trust you? I want us to trust each other. That's how real partnerships work. He took a sip of his whiskey. But we'll get there or we won't. For now, let's start with honesty. Ask me anything. Lena considered the offer, weighing what she actually wanted to know against what might be dangerous to ask. Then she decided that if they were supposed to be partners, she might as well start acting like it. Are you planning to expand into Chicago's territories? Eventually. Not immediately. I need to consolidate my Eastern holdings first, like you told Senator Morrison's wife. But yes, within 2 years, I'll need Chicago access. And my father is a useful ally until he's not. Then he'll be a problem to solve. Adrian's voice held no emotion. Does that bother you? No, Lena said honestly. My father's been a problem my entire life. I won't mourn his downfall. Good, because it's coming, one way or another. Men like Dominic Varelli don't adapt to changing circumstances. They double down on old methods until someone smarter replaces them. Adrian leaned forward slightly. Your turn. What do you want from this arrangement? And don't give me the safe answer. Tell me the truth. Lena thought about Mia, safe and free. She thought about her father's cold dismissal, about being invisible for so long she'd almost convinced herself it was safety. She thought about the way Adrian had looked at her during their first conversation and seen something worth negotiating with instead of just using. I want to matter, she said quietly. I want my intelligence to be valued instead of threatening. I want to build something that's mine instead of just surviving in someone else's world. She met his eyes. I want power, real power, the kind that means I never have to sacrifice myself to save the people I love ever again. Adrian's smile was sharp and approving. Then we're going to work well together, because I want all those things too. He raised his glass. To partnership. Lena clinked her glass against his, the sound clear in the quiet room. To partnership. They talked for hours that night, two strangers who'd just legally bound themselves together, trying to map the boundaries of what they'd created. Adrian told her about his operations, about the territories he controlled, and the enemies who wanted him dead. Lena told him about Chicago's family dynamics, about the hidden alliances and secret grudges that defined her father's world. It felt like a strategy session between colleagues rather than a wedding night between newlyweds, and somehow, that made it perfect. When Lena finally retreated to her own bedroom, a space that was genuinely hers, decorated in soft grays and whites, with a desk by the window and bookshelves that Adrian had somehow known to include, she sat on the bed and tried to process everything that had happened. She was married to Adrian Moretti, the most dangerous man on the eastern seaboard, and somehow, against all logic and probability, she thought she might actually survive this. The first few weeks of marriage settled into an unexpected rhythm. Adrian left early most mornings for meetings Lena wasn't yet cleared to attend, returning in the evenings for dinner where they'd discuss their respective days like business partners comparing notes. He introduced her to his inner circle gradually. Marcus, his second-in-command, who watched Lena with calculating suspicion until she proved she could analyze territorial disputes as well as he could. Sophia, his information specialist, who warmed to Lena when she provided intel on 3 Chicago families that Sophia's network had missed. James, his lawyer, who seemed genuinely pleased to have someone who actually read the contracts he drafted. Lena had her own projects, too. Adrian gave her access to his files on Chicago's power structure and asked her to update his intelligence, to flag weaknesses and opportunities his Eastern perspective had missed. She spent hours in her office, building comprehensive profiles on every major family, every small-time operator, every corrupt official who might be useful. It was the kind of work she'd always been good at: observation, analysis, strategic thinking. But this was the first time anyone had actually valued it. You're wasted as just a social liaison, Marcus told her one evening, 3 weeks into the marriage. They were in Adrian's study, reviewing territorial maps. You think like an operator. My father would call that unfeminine. Your father's an idiot. Marcus tapped the map where Lena had marked 3 potential expansion points her father's men had overlooked. Adrian should put you in actual operations. You'd be good at it. The comment stayed with Lena, warming something cold inside her chest. In her father's world, her intelligence had been something to hide, to downplay, to apologize for. In Adrian's world, it was currency. She was still processing this revelation when her father demanded a meeting. The summons came through Vincent, delivered with the kind of formal courtesy that barely masked Dominic Varelli's fury. Apparently, 3 weeks of marriage to Adrian Moretti had been long enough for her father to realize exactly how much power Lena had actually gained. He wants to meet at the old house, Vincent told her over the phone. Tomorrow afternoon, just you. And if I refuse? He said to tell you it concerns your sister. Lena's blood went cold. What about Mia? He didn't say, just that you'd want to hear it. She told Adrian that evening over dinner, watching his expression carefully for signs of anger or control. Instead, he set down his fork and considered the information like he would any tactical problem. It's a power play, son, he said finally. He's testing whether you'll still come when he calls, whether you're really mine or still his. What do you think I should do? What do you want to do? Lena thought about Mia, about the threat implicit in her father's message. I want to go, but I want to go protected. Adrian's smile was slight but approving. Marcus will drive you. He'll wait outside and you'll wear a wire. If your father tries anything, we'll hear it, and Marcus will intervene. He paused. But Lena, this is your choice. If you want to cut ties completely, we can protect Mia another way. No, I need to know what he wants. Lena met Adrian's eyes, and I need him to see that I'm not afraid of him anymore. The next afternoon, Lena arrived at her childhood home in one of Adrian's armored cars, with Marcus in the driver's seat and a recording device hidden beneath her blouse. The house looked the same as always, imposing and cold, a monument to her father's empire. Dominic was waiting in his study, exactly where Lena had confronted him a month ago about Mia's engagement. He looked older somehow, the lines around his eyes deeper, his expression harder. Lena. He didn't stand when she entered. I wasn't sure you'd come. You mentioned Mia. Of course I came. Yes, your sister. Dominic gestured to a chair. Sit, we need to talk. Lena remained standing. What about Mia? She's been accepted to Columbia, full scholarship. She's planning to move to New York in the fall. Her father's voice was neutral, giving nothing away. I thought you'd want to know. Relief flooded through Lena, so strong she almost stumbled. Mia was safe, free, getting everything she'd ever wanted. That's wonderful, Lena managed. Is it? Dominic stood, moving to the window. Your sister leaves for college. You've married into the Moretti organization. That leaves me with no daughters in Chicago, no immediate family to leverage for alliances. I'm sure you'll survive. Will I? He turned, and for the first time Lena saw genuine anger in his expression. You think you're clever, don't you? Maneuvering yourself into a partnership with Adrian Moretti, gaining independence, protecting your sister. But you've made a critical mistake, Lena. What mistake? You've forgotten where you come from, who made you, what you owe. Dominic moved closer, his voice dropping. I could have given you to Calabrese. I could have married you off to any number of men who would have used you and discarded you. But I gave you to Moretti because you convinced me it was strategic. Now you act like you owe me nothing. I owe you nothing, Lena said clearly. You were going to sacrifice Mia to a monster. I stopped you. That doesn't make me ungrateful. It makes me smarter than you expected. Her father's hand shot out, gripping her arm hard enough to bruise. You're still my daughter, still a Varelli. And that means you're still mine to command. No. Lena didn't pull away, didn't flinch. I'm Adrian Moretti's wife. That means I'm under his protection, his authority, his power structure. You gave me away, Father. You don't get to take me back. You think Moretti will protect you? Dominic's laugh was bitter. He's using you, just like I would have used you. The moment you stop being useful, he'll discard you. And when that happens, don't come crawling back to me. I won't need to. Lena pulled her arm free. Because unlike you, Adrian values intelligence over obedience. He wants a partner, not property. And he's given me more power in 4 weeks than you gave me in 26 years. She turned to leave, but her father's voice stopped her. Lena, one more thing. She looked back. Adrian Moretti is planning to move against my territories. Within 6 months, maybe less. He'll use the marriage connection to justify it, claim he's consolidating family holdings. Dominic's expression was cold. When that happens, you'll have to choose, your husband or your blood. I already chose, Lena said quietly, the moment you tried to sell Mia to Marco Calabrese. She walked out of that house for what she knew would be the last time, her head high and her heart pounding. Marcus was waiting in the car, his expression grim. I heard everything, he said as they pulled away. Your father's planning to push back when Adrian makes his move. He's gathering allies. I know. Lena watched the mansion disappear in the side mirror. He's desperate. That makes him dangerous. Should we tell Adrian? He already knows. My father's not subtle enough to hide this kind of preparation. Lena leaned back against the seat. But we should accelerate our timeline. If father's gathering allies, we need to move first. Marcus glanced at her with something that might have been respect. You sound like one of us. Maybe I am. That evening, Lena laid out everything for Adrian. Her father's threats, his alliance building, the timeline for his inevitable pushback against Moretti expansion. They sat in Adrian's study with territorial maps spread across the desk, planning like generals before a war. He's right about one thing, Adrian said, marking positions on the map. We will move against his territories. We were always going to. The marriage just determines how bloody it gets. And how bloody will it get? Adrian looked up, his dark eyes serious. That depends on your father. If he's smart, he'll negotiate a peaceful transition, maintain some holdings under our oversight, retire with dignity. If he's proud, Lena said flatly. He'll fight until he loses everything. Then we'll have to make sure he loses in a way that doesn't destroy half of Chicago in the process. Adrian stood, moving to the window. Lena, this is going to get complicated. Your father will use your sister against you if he can. He'll try to make you choose between family loyalty and your partnership with me. I already chose. I know, but it's going to hurt anyway. Adrian turned to face her. I need you to be sure, really sure, because once we start this, there's no backing down. Your father will become an enemy, and enemies in our world end up dead or imprisoned. Lena thought about Mia, safe at Columbia. She thought about her father's cold calculation, about being currency instead of a daughter. She thought about the power she'd gained in 4 weeks of partnership with Adrian, real power, valued power, the kind that meant she mattered. I'm sure, she said. What do we need to do? They spent the next 3 hours planning, and Lena discovered she was good at this. Strategy, tactical thinking, seeing 3 moves ahead. Adrian listened to her suggestions, incorporated her knowledge of Chicago's families, trusted her analysis in a way that made her feel genuinely valuable. When they finally finished, the maps were covered in notes and markers, a comprehensive strategy for dismantling Dominic Varelli's empire without triggering a full-scale war. You're certain about this? Adrian asked one more time. Yes. Then we move next week. He gathered the maps, locking them in his safe. And Lena, thank you. For what? For choosing this, for being exactly as smart and ruthless as I hoped you'd be. Adrian's smile was genuine. I think we're going to do great things together. That night, lying in her own bed in her own room in Adrian's house, Lena realized she'd crossed another line she couldn't uncross. She wasn't just married to Adrian Moretti anymore. She was actively working against her own father, helping to plan his downfall. It should have felt like betrayal. Instead, it felt like finally choosing herself. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mia. Thank you for Columbia. Thank you for everything. I love you. Lena typed back quickly. Love you too. Be safe. Be happy. Then she added, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And for the first time in her life, she meant it. The plan to move against Dominic Varelli's empire began with a series of quiet meetings that most people would never notice. Adrian didn't believe in dramatic confrontations or public displays of power. He believed in systematic dismantling, in cutting off support structures one by one until the entire edifice collapsed under its own weight. Lena sat in on every meeting, no longer just an observer, but an active participant. She knew Chicago's families better than anyone on Adrian's team, could predict which alliances would hold and which would fracture under pressure. It was intoxicating, being valued for her mind, being trusted with real decisions that would reshape the city's criminal landscape. The Castellanos are the weak point, she told Adrian and Marcus during a strategy session in the 3rd week of their planning. They've been allied with my father for 15 years, but it's purely financial. Marco Castellano's son wants to modernize their operations, bring in technology and legitimate business fronts. My father thinks that's weakness. And you think we can flip them? Marcus asked, studying the organizational chart spread across the conference table. I think Marco Jr. would jump at the chance to partner with someone who respects innovation. He's been pushing his father to update their money laundering operations for months. Lena tapped the chart. Offer him access to your cryptocurrency networks and technical expertise. He'll bring his father along. Adrian was quiet for a moment, his dark eyes studying Lena with that intensity she'd come to recognize. You're talking about splitting a 15-year alliance. Your father will see that as a direct attack. It is a direct attack, Lena said calmly. That's the point. And you're comfortable with that? My father made his choices. I'm making mine. She met Adrian's gaze steadily. Unless you're having second thoughts about this partnership. The corner of Adrian's mouth lifted in something that might have been a smile. No second thoughts. Just making sure you understand the consequences. Once we start this, your father will know you're actively working against him. Good. Let him know. Lena stood, moving to the window that overlooked Chicago's skyline. He spent my entire life underestimating me. It's time he learned exactly what that cost him. The meeting with Marco Castellano Jr. happened 3 days later in a private dining room at one of Chicago's most exclusive restaurants. Adrian had arranged everything with his usual precision: neutral territory, maximum privacy, and enough security to handle trouble if it arose. Marco Jr. arrived exactly on time, a lean man in his early 30s with sharp eyes and the careful posture of someone who'd spent his life navigating dangerous politics. He shook Adrian's hand with professional courtesy, then turned to Lena with barely concealed surprise. "Mrs. Moretti, I wasn't expecting you to be part of this meeting." "I'm part of all the meetings," Lena said smoothly, gesturing to the table. "Please sit. We have a lot to discuss." For the next hour, Lena watched Adrian work. He was masterful at this, presenting opportunities without making them sound like demands, showing Marco Jr. exactly what he could gain by switching allegiances without explicitly threatening what he'd lose by refusing. It was a clinic in sophisticated negotiation, and Lena absorbed every technique. "Your current cryptocurrency operations are vulnerable," Adrian was saying, his voice conversational but precise. "The IRS has been building cases against 3 families using similar structures. It's only a matter of time before they expand their investigation." Marco Jr.'s expression tightened. "My father insists the old methods are secure." "The old methods are dinosaurs waiting for extinction." Adrian slid a folder across the table. "These are the technical specifications for a new laundering network, blockchain-based, distributed across multiple jurisdictions, effectively untraceable using current law enforcement tools. We've been using it for 18 months. 0 prosecutions, 0 seizures." Marco opened the folder, his eyes widening as he scanned the contents. This is sophisticated." "It's the future," Lena interjected quietly. "The families that adapt will thrive. The ones that don't will end up in federal prison or bankrupt. My father thinks technology is weakness. Adrian understands it's the only way to survive modern law enforcement." Marco looked at her with new assessment in his eyes. "Your father won't take kindly to you helping competitors access better operations." "My father stopped being my priority the moment he tried to sell my sister to Marco Calabrese," Lena said flatly. "Now my priority is building something sustainable, something smarter than brute force and old grudges." "And you think the Morettis are that something?" "I know they are. I've seen the infrastructure. I've reviewed the operations. What Adrian's built is 20 years ahead of the traditional families." Lena leaned forward slightly. "The question is whether you want access to that future, or whether you want to go down with the past when it inevitably collapses." Marco was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming on the folder. Finally, he looked at Adrian. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A partnership. You bring your father's organization into our alliance structure. In exchange, you get access to our technical infrastructure, our legal expertise, and our protection when the traditional families start falling." Adrian's voice was completely calm. "We're not asking you to betray Dominic Varelli. We're offering you a lifeboat before his ship sinks. And if I refuse? Then you refuse, and we part as friendly acquaintances who had an interesting conversation." Adrian smiled slightly. "But Marco, be honest with yourself. How long do you think the old alliances will hold? How long before the feds come knocking, or a rival family decides your father's methods are too outdated to respect?" Marco stared at the folder for what felt like an eternity. Then he closed it carefully and met Adrian's eyes. "I'll need to talk to my father. But personally, I think you're right. The old ways are dying, and I'd rather survive than go down with them out of misplaced loyalty." "Take your time," Adrian said. "But not too much time. Things are going to move quickly over the next few months." After Marco left, Lena and Adrian remained at the table, the remains of an untouched lunch between them. "That went well," Marcus said from his position by the door. He'd been present the entire time, a silent reminder of Adrian's power. "It went perfectly," Adrian corrected, his attention on Lena. "You were excellent. The way you framed the choice, future versus past, survival versus loyalty, that sealed it." "I just told him the truth. The truth is a weapon when wielded correctly. You're learning to use it." Adrian stood, offering his hand. "Come on, we have 2 more meetings today, and I want you in both of them." Over the next 3 weeks, Lena attended 17 meetings with various Chicago families and power brokers. Adrian was systematically building a coalition, offering each family something they needed: better technology, legal protection, access to markets, security guarantees, while quietly positioning himself as the inevitable successor to the old guard. And everywhere they went, Lena was there. Not as decoration, not as a trophy wife, but as Adrian's partner in every meaningful sense. She knew which families would respond to threats and which needed to be courted. She could read the room, identify the decision makers, and tailor their approach to maximum effect. She was good at this. Better than good. She was discovering she had a natural talent for strategy and negotiation that had been suppressed her entire life under her father's dismissive gaze. "You're enjoying this," Adrian observed one evening as they reviewed the day's meetings. They were in his study, papers spread across every surface, building a comprehensive map of Chicago's shifting allegiances. "Is that a problem?" "Not at all. I prefer partners who are invested in the work." Adrian marked 3 more families who'd agreed to preliminary discussions. "But I'm curious, is this what you imagined when you offered yourself in your sister's place?" Lena considered the question honestly. "No, I imagined survival, endurance, making the best of a terrible situation." She looked up from the documents she was reviewing. "I didn't imagine actually having power, actually mattering." "You always mattered, Lena. Your father was just too stupid to see it." The casual compliment shouldn't have affected her, but it did. Lena had spent so long being invisible that being seen, really seen, valued, trusted, felt revolutionary. "What happens when we've finished consolidating Chicago?" she asked, changing the subject. "When there's no more strategy to plan, no more meetings to attend?" Adrian leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Then we find new challenges, new territories, new problems, new opportunities. This isn't a temporary project, Lena. What we're building, it's permanent, a genuine partnership." "You sound certain." "I am certain. You've proven yourself over the past 6 weeks. You're smart, strategic, and ruthless when necessary. Those qualities don't have an expiration date." Before Lena could respond, Adrian's phone buzzed with an incoming message. He glanced at the screen, and his expression shifted into something cold and focused. "What is it?" Lena asked. "Your father. He's called a meeting with the old families, Castellano, Ricci, De Luca, all the traditionalists." Adrian scrolled through the message. "He's pushing back, trying to consolidate his own coalition before we finish building ours." "When?" "Tomorrow night. He's presenting it as a discussion about maintaining traditional power structures, but really it's about stopping us." Lena's mind was already racing through implications. "Marco Castellano will be there. If his son has already talked to him about your offer, then tomorrow night becomes a referendum on whether the old guard accepts change or fights it." Adrian set down his phone. This could accelerate everything. Or it could backfire. If my father convinces enough families to stand together. He won't. Adrian's voice carried absolute confidence. Because we have something he doesn't. "What?" "You. You know exactly how he'll argue, exactly what fears he'll exploit, exactly how to counter his strategy." Adrian stood, moving around the desk to stand beside her. "We need to get ahead of this. Reach out to every family attending that meeting. Make sure they know what they're choosing between." They worked through the night, coordinating with Adrian's network to ensure every attendee at Dominic's meeting received a personal visit or call beforehand. It was a coordinated campaign of influence and persuasion, showing each family leader exactly what they'd gain by siding with Adrian and what they'd lose by clinging to the past. Lena handled the Castellanos personally, calling Marco Jr. at midnight with Adrian's approval. "Your father's meeting tomorrow," she said without preamble when he answered. "My father's going to ask him to choose sides." "I know. My father's been preparing his arguments all evening." "Marco, listen to me. Whatever my father promises tomorrow, stability, tradition, the old alliances, it's built on sand. He can't protect your family from modern law enforcement. He can't adapt to changing markets. He can offer you loyalty, but loyalty doesn't keep you out of prison." Marco was quiet for a moment. "What are you asking me to do?" "Talk to your father. Remind him that survival matters more than tradition. Make sure he understands that Adrian isn't trying to destroy the families. He's trying to save them from their own obsolescence." "And if my father chooses Dominic anyway?" Lena took a breath, knowing what she was about to say would sound ruthless. "Then make sure you're positioned to take over the family when your father's choices inevitably fail. Because they will fail, Marco. The only question is whether you go down with him or whether you're smart enough to choose differently." After she hung up, Adrian was watching her with that measuring gaze she'd come to know. "That was cold," he said. "That was necessary." "Yes, it was." He smiled slightly. You're becoming exactly what I hoped you would. What's that? Someone who understands that mercy is a luxury we can't afford, not when we're trying to build something that will actually last. The night of Dominic's meeting, Lena and Adrian waited in his study with Marcus and Sophia, monitoring communications from their network. They had people outside the venue, tracking who arrived and how long they stayed, but no direct intelligence about what was being said inside. It was excruciating, waiting. Lena paced the study while Adrian remained calm, reviewing documents like this was just another evening. You're nervous, he observed. Of course I'm nervous. My father's in there right now, probably calling me a traitor, trying to convince every family that you're dangerous, and I'm a weakness you've acquired. And you think they'll believe him? Lena stopped pacing. I think some of them will. The older generation, the ones who've been in my father's pocket for decades. They'll see me as a dutiful daughter gone rogue rather than someone making intelligent, strategic choices. Then they'll be on the wrong side when this ends. Adrian set down his papers. Lena, come here. She moved to stand in front of his desk, and Adrian studied her with those dark, intense eyes that seemed to see straight through any pretense. I need you to understand something, he said quietly. Whatever your father says about you, whatever lies he tells or fears he exploits, none of it changes what you've proven over the past 6 weeks. You're brilliant at this work. You've been invaluable to our strategy, and when this is over, when we've finished consolidating Chicago, everyone will know exactly what you're worth. You sound very confident. I am confident. In you, in what we're building, in the inevitable outcome of this situation. Adrian stood, moving around the desk. Your father's meeting will fail because he's offering fear and tradition. We're offering opportunity and survival. Which would you choose? Before Lena could answer, Sophia's laptop chimed with an incoming message. She scanned it quickly, her expression shifting. The meeting just ended, Sophia announced. Early. Marco Castellano walked out halfway through, and 3 other families followed him. Lena's heart was pounding. What happened? According to our source, Dominic accused you of being a traitor and demanded the families choose between honoring old alliances or supporting a power-hungry outsider who'd corrupted his daughter. Sophia scrolled through more messages. Marco Jr. stood up and said his family chooses the future over the past. Then he left. The Ricci's, DeLucas, and Morellis followed within 10 minutes. 4 families, Marcus said, respect clear in his voice. That's almost half his coalition gone in one night. Adrian's smile was sharp and satisfied. And the rest? Staying, but our intelligence suggests they're nervous. Dominic's losing control of the room. Lena sank into a chair, processing what had just happened. Her father had tried to consolidate power through tradition and loyalty, and it had backfired spectacularly. The families she'd personally reached out to, the ones she'd convinced that adaptation was survival, they'd chosen her strategy over her father's. It's not over, she said quietly. My father doesn't accept defeat gracefully. No, Adrian agreed. He'll escalate. The question is how and when. The answer came 3 days later, and it was worse than Lena had imagined. She was in her office, reviewing acquisition documents for one of the territories they were consolidating, when Marcus burst through the door with an expression that made her blood run cold. We have a problem, he said shortly. Mia's been taken. Everything else vanished. The documents, the strategy, the careful planning, none of it mattered. Only Mia, only her sister, who was supposed to be safe at Columbia, far away from their father's reach. What happened? Lena's voice was amazingly steady given that her entire world was crumbling. She was grabbed outside her dorm 3 hours ago. 2 men, professional work. They left a message. Marcus handed her a phone showing a text message. It's from your father. The message was brief and devastating. You chose your husband over your family. Now we'll see what that choice costs you. You have 48 hours to come home. Alone. Or Mia pays for your disloyalty. Lena read it twice, 3 times, her mind refusing to process the implications. This couldn't be happening. She'd sacrificed everything to keep Mia safe. She'd married Adrian, betrayed her father, rebuilt her entire life around protecting her sister, and now her father had taken Mia anyway. Where's Adrian? She asked, her voice hollow. On his way. He was meeting with the Castellanos when we got word. Lena stood, her movements mechanical. She needed to think, to plan, to find a strategy that would save Mia without destroying everything else. But her mind was a blank wall of terror and rage. Adrian arrived within minutes, his expression darker than Lena had ever seen it. He took one look at her face and immediately crossed to her side. "We'll get her back," he said with absolute certainty. "He wants me. Alone. In 48 hours, or he kills her." "He's not going to kill her. She's his only leverage." "You don't know my father like I do." Lena's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her desk, forcing them still. "He'll hurt her. Even if I go, even if I give him what he wants, he'll hurt her just to punish me." "Then we don't give him what he wants." Adrian's voice was cold, controlled, absolutely lethal. "We get Mia back and we end this. Permanently." "How?" "He'll be expecting an attack. He'll have Mia somewhere secure, surrounded by his best people." "Lena," Adrian caught her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "I have been dismantling criminal organizations since I was 23 years old. Your father is good, but he's not better than me. We will find Mia. We will extract her safely, and then we will finish what we started." "You're talking about going to war with my father." "I'm talking about removing a threat to my wife and destroying a man who's stupid enough to think he can use terrorism to win a political battle." Adrian's dark eyes were absolutely serious. "This isn't just strategy anymore, Lena. He took someone you love. That makes it personal. And I'm very good at personal." Lena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that Adrian's confidence was justified, that they could actually pull this off. But all she could think about was Mia, terrified and alone, paying for Lena's choices. "What do we do?" she whispered. "First we find her. Sophia's already tracking every property your father owns or has access to. We'll narrow down likely locations within 12 hours. Adrian released her shoulders but stayed close. Second, we assemble a team. Not just security, actual extraction specialists. People who can get in and out of a fortified location without triggering a bloodbath. And third? Third, you let me handle this. Because I know you, Lena. I know you're already planning to trade yourself for your sister, to walk into your father's trap and hope for the best. But that's not what we're going to do." He was right. That was exactly what Lena had been planning. To give herself up, to beg for Mia's freedom, to accept whatever punishment her father designed if it meant her sister survived. "She's innocent," Lena said, her voice breaking. "She doesn't deserve to be caught in this." "No, she doesn't, which is why we're going to save her." Adrian's expression softened slightly. "Trust me, Lena. Trust the partnership we've built. Let me be what you married me to be, someone powerful enough to protect the people you love." Lena looked at this man she'd married 6 weeks ago, this stranger who'd somehow become her partner, her ally, her best chance at saving her sister, and she made a choice. "Okay," she said, "tell me what you need from me." What Adrian needed from Lena was something she'd never expected to give: complete access to every secret she knew about her father's operations. Every safe house, every loyal soldier, every hidden property that Dominic Varelli thought no one else knew about. Lena had spent her life being invisible in her father's world, and that invisibility had given her knowledge that even his most trusted men didn't possess. She sat with Sophia and Marcus in the war room Adrian had set up, a secure space in the basement of his building filled with monitors and secure communication equipment. For 8 straight hours, Lena drew maps from memory, listing properties and personnel with the kind of detail that came from years of careful observation. "There's a warehouse in the industrial district," she said, marking it on the digital map Sophia was building. "My father bought it through a shell company 15 years ago. Uses it for storage mostly, but it's fortified. Reinforced doors, security cameras, only 3 points of entry." "Could he keep someone there, Shisostvo?" Marcus asked, making notes. "He could. It's isolated enough that no one would hear anything, secure enough that extraction would be difficult." Lena closed her eyes, picturing the layout. "But there's a weakness. The security system is old, runs on a closed circuit that Vincent installed back in 2015. If you can access the junction box on the south side, you can loop the camera feeds." Sophia was already typing. "I can work with that. What else?" They worked through the night, building a comprehensive map of every location where Dominic might be holding Mia. By dawn, they had narrowed it down to 7 possibilities, ranked by likelihood based on security, isolation, and strategic value. Adrian had been coordinating with his extraction team throughout the night, men Lena had never met but whose reputations preceded them. When he finally returned to the war room, his expression was grimly satisfied. "We have thermal imaging on 3 of the properties," he announced, pulling up satellite feeds on the main monitor. "The warehouse you mentioned shows heat signatures consistent with 4 to 6 people. one isolated in what looks like a storage room in the southeast corner. Lena's heart jumped. That's her. That has to be her. Probably, Adrian agreed. But we verify before we move. Marcus, I want eyes on that warehouse within the hour. Confirm the signatures, identify guard patterns, find me every weakness in their security. Already on it, Marcus said, heading for the door. Adrian turned to Lena and she saw exhaustion in his eyes for the first time since she'd known him. He'd been awake as long as she had, coordinating, planning, mobilizing resources to save a girl he'd never met because she mattered to his wife. You should rest, Lena said quietly. So should you. I can't. Not while Mia's... Her voice broke, and she fought to steady it. I keep thinking about how scared she must be. She doesn't understand this world like I do. She still thinks people can be reasoned with, that there are rules. There are rules, Adrian interrupted gently. They're just different from what she imagines. And one of those rules is that you don't touch another man's family without consequences. Your father broke that rule. Now he pays for it. I want to be there. When you extract her, I want to be there. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face. No. Adrian, I said no, Lena. You're too emotionally invested, and emotional investment gets people killed in tactical situations. His voice was firm but not unkind. I need you here, coordinating with Sophia, ready to adapt if the situation changes. That's where you're most valuable. She's my sister! Which is exactly why you can't be in the field. If something goes wrong, if they use her as a hostage or a shield, you'll hesitate. You'll make decisions based on fear instead of strategy. Adrian moved closer, his expression serious. Trust me to bring her home safely. Trust the team I've assembled. Trust that I understand what she means to you, and I won't let her be hurt. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to insist on her right to be there when they saved Mia. But Adrian was right. She knew he was right. In a tactical situation, emotion was a liability, and Mia's safety was too important to risk on Lena's need to be present. Okay, she said finally, but if anything goes wrong, you'll be the first person I call. Adrian's hand found hers, squeezing once. I promise you, Lena, I'm bringing your sister home. The next 12 hours were the longest of Lena's life. Marcus confirmed the thermal signatures at the warehouse and identified 6 guards working in rotating shifts. Sophia hacked the security system exactly as Lena had described, giving them access to camera feeds that showed Mia in a storage room, alive but clearly terrified. The extraction team assembled and reviewed the tactical plan with the kind of precision that spoke to years of dangerous experience. And through it all, Lena could only wait and watch, and try not to imagine everything that could go wrong. Adrian's phone buzzed at hour 36, a message from Dominic demanding confirmation that Lena would meet his deadline. Don't respond, Lena said immediately when Adrian showed her the message. Let him think I'm coming. Let him think he's won. He'll escalate if you don't answer. Not yet. He's playing a psychological game, trying to make me panic, trying to force a mistake. Lena studied the message with the analytical distance she'd learned to apply to her father's manipulations. He'll wait until the last possible moment before he actually hurts her. That's how he operates. Maximum fear, maximum control. Adrian looked impressed. You're certain? I spent 26 years learning how his mind works. He wants me broken and desperate when I arrive. That means keeping Mia alive and relatively unharmed until he has me in front of him. Lena's voice was cold, controlled, everything she'd learned about surviving in their world. We have time. Not much, but enough. The extraction happened at hour 42, 6 hours before Dominic's deadline. Lena watched it unfold through body cameras worn by Adrian's team, her hands gripping the edge of Sophia's desk hard enough to leave marks. The team moved like shadows, silent and efficient. Sophia looped the security feeds while they bypassed the external locks, giving them 90 seconds of invisible approach before the guards would notice the anomaly. They breached through the south entrance exactly as planned, neutralizing 2 guards with suppressed weapons before anyone could raise an alarm. Lena watched Marcus move through the warehouse with lethal grace, his team fanning out to cover every angle. They reached the storage room where Mia was being held, and Lena held her breath as they breached the door. Mia was there, tied to a chair but visibly unharmed, her eyes wide with terror that shifted to confusion when armed men in tactical gear appeared instead of their captors. One of Adrian's men cut her restraints while the others secured the room, their movements coordinated and precise. "We're friends of your sister," Lena heard someone say through the camera feed. "We're getting you out of here." Then everything went wrong. An alarm blared through the warehouse. Not the security system Sophia had compromised, but a secondary alert that Lena hadn't known existed. Her father had layered his security, anticipated the exact kind of technical breach they'd executed. "Contact!" Marcus's voice came through the comms, sharp and urgent. "4 additional hostiles armed, approaching from the north corridor." Gunfire erupted, controlled bursts that sounded impossibly loud through the speakers. Lena watched the body camera feeds dissolve into chaos as Adrian's team returned fire, protecting Mia while fighting their way toward the exit. "Get her out!" Marcus was shouting orders, directing his team with the kind of battlefield command that came from experience. "Thompson, Wilson, cover R6. Santiago, you're on principal protection." Mia was being half carried, half dragged toward the extraction point by a massive man who kept his body between her and any incoming fire. More guards appeared, and the tactical situation deteriorated rapidly. "They're pinned down," Sophia said, her fingers flying across her keyboard. "The north corridor is the only viable exit, and there are at least 6 hostiles blocking it." Lena's mind was racing. She knew this warehouse, had walked through it a dozen times over the years, when her father thought she wasn't paying attention. There had to be another way out, some route that... "The loading dock," she said suddenly, "on the west side. It's usually locked from the inside, but if they can reach it, there's a service alley that connects to the main road." "How do they access it?" Sophia was already pulling up the warehouse schematic. "Through the maintenance corridor behind the main storage area. It's narrow, maybe 3 feet wide, but it bypasses the north corridor entirely." Lena pointed to the map. "Here. They'd have to move through the storage room, but it gets them to the dock without confronting the main guard force." Sophia relayed the information immediately, and Lena watched Marcus redirect his team. They moved Mia through the storage area, using industrial shelving as cover, while suppressing fire kept the guards occupied. The narrow corridor appeared exactly where Lena said it would, and the team funneled through it with Mia protected in the center of their formation. They reached the loading dock 3 minutes later. The door was locked as expected, but Adrian's team had brought breaching charges for exactly this contingency. A controlled explosion blew the lock, and suddenly they were outside, moving toward extraction vehicles, while return fire sparked off concrete and metal. "Go, go, go!" Marcus's voice was steady despite the chaos. "Principal is secure, moving to secondary extraction point." Lena watched them load Mia into an armored SUV, watched the vehicle accelerate away from the warehouse with 2 others providing security, watched until the feeds showed clear roads and no pursuit. "They're clear," Sophia confirmed, monitoring traffic cameras. "No tails, no complications. ETA to safe house is 20 minutes. Lena sank into a chair, her entire body shaking with relief so intense it was almost painful. Mia was safe. They'd actually done it, infiltrated her father's stronghold and extracted her sister without anyone on their team being seriously injured. Adrian appeared beside her, materializing from wherever he'd been coordinating the operation. "Told you I'd bring her home." "You did." Lena looked up at him, seeing the man who'd just deployed military-level resources to save a 19-year-old girl he'd never met, all because she mattered to his wife. "Thank you doesn't seem adequate." "Thank you isn't necessary. This is what partners do, protect what matters to each other." Adrian pulled out his phone. "But we're not done. Your father just lost his only leverage, and men like him don't accept that gracefully. He'll retaliate." "Let him try." Lena stood, and something in her expression made Adrian's eyes sharpen with approval. "He wanted to teach me a lesson about choosing loyalty over strategy. Instead, he just taught me that I chose correctly. Now it's time we taught him one." The safe house where Mia was taken was a nondescript building in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place that looked like an ordinary residence but was actually a fortress. Lena arrived 30 minutes after the extraction, her heart pounding as she walked through the security checkpoints. Mia was in the living room, wrapped in a blanket despite the warm temperature, her hands shaking around a cup of tea someone had given her. When she saw Lena, she burst into tears. "I'm sorry," Mia sobbed as Lena pulled her into a fierce embrace. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know I thought I was safe at school." "Shh, it's okay. You're safe now." Lena held her sister tight, feeling the tremors running through Mia's small frame. "Did they hurt you?" "No. They grabbed me and put me in a van, and then that room..." Mia's voice broke. Father was there. He said terrible things about you, about your husband, about how you'd betrayed the family. What I did wasn't betrayal. It was survival. Lena pulled back, looking into her sister's red-rimmed eyes. Mia, I need you to listen to me very carefully. What Father did, kidnapping you, using you as leverage, that's not going to happen again, ever. Because Adrian and I are going to make sure of it. What are you going to do? Lena thought about the maps in the war room, about the systematic dismantling they'd been planning, about the fact that her father had just given them the perfect justification to accelerate everything. We're going to end this, she said simply, permanently. Over the next 72 hours, Lena and Adrian executed a coordinated assault on Dominic Varelli's empire that was devastating in its precision. They didn't use violence, they used something far more destructive: information. Sophia's team had spent weeks gathering intelligence on every illegal operation, every corrupt official, every financial crime that Dominic had committed over 3 decades of criminal enterprise. Now they weaponized that information with surgical accuracy. Anonymous tips went to federal law enforcement about money laundering operations. Detailed financial records were leaked to the IRS documenting decades of tax evasion. Evidence of bribery and corruption was delivered to the Chicago District Attorney's Office with comprehensive documentation that made prosecution inevitable. But the killing blow came from an unexpected direction: the families themselves. Lena personally reached out to every family that had attended her father's failed meeting, every ally he'd counted on for support, and she made them an offer that was simultaneously generous and threatening. Join Adrian's alliance structure with favorable terms, or go down with Dominic when the federal investigations inevitably expanded beyond just the Virellis. You have 48 hours to decide, she told Marco Castellano during a phone call that was professionally cordial and absolutely ruthless. After that, the district attorney receives an expanded brief that includes anyone still allied with my father. Your choice: adapt and survive, or cling to loyalty and face federal prosecution. She made that same call 17 times over 2 days, and 16 families chose survival. Only one, the Morellis, a dying family run by a patriarch in his 80s who didn't care about consequences anymore, chose loyalty. By the time federal agents raided Dominic Varelli's primary residence with warrants for money laundering, racketeering, and conspiracy, his entire power structure had collapsed. The families had abandoned him. His financial networks were frozen. His political protection had evaporated the moment the evidence became too overwhelming to ignore. Lena watched the raid on the news from Adrian's study, sitting beside her husband while Chicago's media breathlessly reported the fall of one of the city's most powerful crime bosses. There was something surreal about seeing her childhood home swarmed by federal agents, about watching her father being led away in handcuffs, about knowing that she had orchestrated this destruction. "How do you feel?" Adrian asked quietly. Lena considered the question. She thought she'd feel triumphant or relieved or guilty. Instead, she felt something simpler, free. "Like I finally chose myself," she said. "Like every choice I made. Marrying you, helping dismantle his empire, protecting Mia, all of it was choosing to matter instead of just survive. You always mattered, Lena. You just needed the right circumstances to prove it." On the screen, Dominic Varelli was being read his rights. Lena wondered if he understood yet what had destroyed him, not rival families or federal investigations, but his own daughter. The girl he'd dismissed as forgettable, the woman he'd tried to use as currency, the strategic mind he'd never bothered to value. "There's still one loose end," Marcus said from the doorway. He'd been coordinating with their legal team, making sure the federal cases against Dominic were airtight. "Your father's asking to see you, says he'll only talk if you're there." "Absolutely not," Adrian said immediately. "It's a trap or a manipulation." "I'll go," Lena interrupted. "Lena, I need to. Not for him, for me. I need him to see exactly what I've become." She looked at Adrian. "But I won't go alone." "You'll be with me?" Adrian studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Always." The federal detention center was exactly as depressing as Lena expected. Gray walls, fluorescent lighting, the institutional smell of desperation and defeat. Dominic Varelli sat in an interview room wearing an orange jumpsuit that looked obscene on a man who'd spent his entire life in custom suits. He looked older than Lena remembered, the weight of his crimes and their consequences aging him years in just days. When she entered with Adrian, his expression cycled through surprise, rage, and something that might have been respect in a man capable of that emotion. "You did this," Dominic said without preamble. "All of it. The family's turning, the federal investigation, the systematic destruction of everything I built. My own daughter." "Yes," Lena said simply, taking the seat across from him. Adrian remained standing, a silent presence that reminded Dominic exactly who held power now. "Why? I gave you to Moretti. I gave you the alliance you wanted. You should have been grateful." "Grateful?" Lena's laugh was harsh. "You tried to sell my sister to a monster. When I stopped you, you tried to use her against me anyway. You kidnapped a 19-year-old girl to punish me for choosing survival over obedience, and you wonder why I destroyed you. She's my daughter. She's a person, so am I. We were never yours to use as currency." Lena leaned forward, her voice deadly calm. "You spent my entire life telling me I didn't matter, that I was forgettable, that my intelligence was worthless compared to Mia's youth or the sons you never had. But you were wrong. I mattered enough to dismantle your empire. I mattered enough that the most powerful man on the eastern seaboard married me as an equal partner. I mattered enough to save my sister and destroy you in the same 72 hours. Dominic's jaw tightened. "You think Moretti values you? He's using you, just like I would have used you. The moment you stop being useful, he'll still value me because we built something together based on mutual respect instead of ownership." Lena stood. "But honestly, Father, I didn't come here to justify my choices to you. I came to make sure you understood exactly what you lost when you underestimated me." "I made you," Dominic said, his voice rising. "Everything you know about this world. Every skill you used to destroy me. I taught you that. By making you watch, by letting you see how power really works. You taught me what not to be. How not to treat people. How not to value intelligence over loyalty or strategy over humanity." Lena moved toward the door, then paused. "The federal prosecutors have enough evidence to put you away for the rest of your life. The families have abandoned you. Your empire is gone, and your daughters are both free from you forever. That's your legacy, Father. That's what you built." She walked out without looking back, Adrian falling into step beside her. Behind them, Dominic Varelli was shouting something, threats or pleas or curses. Lena didn't know and didn't care. "That was brutal," Adrian observed as they moved through the detention center's security checkpoints. "That was necessary." Lena took a deep breath of outside air when they finally emerged from the building. "He needed to know that I wasn't his victim anymore. That I chose this. All of it. Do you regret it? Any of it?" Lena thought about the woman she'd been 2 months ago, invisible, dismissed, surviving instead of living. Then she thought about who she was now, Adrian's partner, a strategic mind valued and respected, someone powerful enough to protect the people she loved. "No," she said, "I don't regret anything." The legal proceedings against Dominic Varelli took months to fully resolve, but the outcome was never in doubt. The evidence was overwhelming, the prosecution was motivated, and every potential ally had already abandoned him. He was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole. Lena didn't attend the sentencing. She was too busy building the future she'd chosen. With Dominic's empire dismantled, Adrian's alliance absorbed most of Chicago's criminal infrastructure, but they did it differently than the old families. There was less violence, more strategic thinking. They focused on legitimate business fronts, on technical sophistication, on building sustainable operations that could survive increased law enforcement scrutiny. And Lena was at the center of it all, no longer just Adrian's wife, but his genuine partner in every meaningful sense. She ran point on Chicago operations, managed relationships with the absorbed families, and proved that intelligence and strategy were more valuable than brute force. Mia returned to Colombia after spending 2 weeks in protective custody, shaken but ultimately undamaged by her ordeal. She called Lena every few days, her voice getting stronger each time, rebuilding her confidence in her life far away from their father's shadow. "Are you happy?" Mia asked during one of those calls, 3 months after Dominic's sentencing. Lena looked around Adrian's study, her study now too, her books on the shelves, her notes on the desk, her strategies shaping the future they were building together. She thought about the partnership she'd found, the power she'd earned, the freedom she'd fought for. "Yes," she said, and meant it. "I really am." "Good. You deserve to be." Mia paused. "Lena? Thank you." for everything you sacrificed to give me this life. I didn't sacrifice anything, Lena said gently. I chose. There's a difference. After she hung up, Adrian appeared in the doorway with 2 glasses of wine and a satisfied expression. The Castellano merger is complete, he announced. Marco Jr. just signed the final paperwork. As of tonight, we control 80% of Chicago's organized operations. And the remaining 20%? Small operators, not worth the effort to absorb. We'll leave them alone as long as they don't cause problems. Adrian handed her a glass. We did it, Lena. We took Chicago without a war. We did it with strategy instead of violence, with intelligence instead of brute force. Lena clinked her glass against his. Exactly like we planned. Exactly like you planned, Adrian corrected. This was your strategy, your knowledge of the families, your ability to negotiate and convince. I just provided the resources and protection. Partners, Lena said. That's what we agreed. Equal contributions, equal authority. Partners, Adrian agreed. His dark eyes held something Lena had learned to recognize over the past months. Respect, certainly, but also something warmer, something that looked almost like affection. To the empire we built together. They drank to that, standing in the study where they'd planned their victory, surrounded by the evidence of what they'd accomplished. And Lena realized that somewhere between strategic alliance and genuine partnership, between choosing survival and claiming power, she'd found something she'd never expected. She'd found home, not in a place or a building, but in the partnership itself, in being valued, trusted, seen, in mattering to someone who had the power to protect what mattered to her, in building something that was genuinely hers instead of just surviving in someone else's world. What are you thinking? Adrian asked, watching her with that perceptive gaze that missed nothing. That I made the right choice, Lena said, when I walked into my father's office and offered myself in Mia's place. When I agreed to marry you. When I helped dismantle my father's empire. All of it. I chose correctly. No regrets? None. Adrian smiled, and it was genuine, warm, the expression of someone who'd found exactly what they were looking for in the most unexpected place. Good, because we're just getting started. Chicago was just the beginning. What's next? Whatever we decide together. Adrian moved closer, and for the first time since they'd married, the space between them felt charged with something beyond strategy and alliance. That's the beauty of partnership, Lena. We build the future we choose. No one else's rules, no one else's expectations, just ours. Lena thought about that, about the radical freedom of choosing her own path, about the power that came with being valued for her mind, about the partnership that had transformed from strategic necessity into something genuine and lasting. Then let's make it extraordinary, she said. And they did. The months following Dominic Varelli's imprisonment transformed Chicago's criminal landscape in ways that most people would never see or understand. On the surface, the city looked the same restaurants, the same businesses, the same political machinery grinding forward. But underneath, the power structures had fundamentally shifted, and Lena Moretti stood at the center of that transformation. She'd stopped thinking of herself as Lena Varelli somewhere around month 4 of her marriage. That woman, invisible, dismissed, surviving on the margins of her father's world, felt like someone else entirely. Lena Moretti was powerful, respected, feared in the right circles, and valued in ways that still surprised her when she stopped to think about it, which she tried not to do too often, because thinking led to questioning, and questioning led to wondering if this was all somehow temporary. If Adrian would eventually tire of their partnership, if the families would eventually challenge her authority, if she'd wake up one morning back in her father's house with all of this revealed as an impossible dream. But 6 months became 8, and 8 became 10, and the dream kept proving itself real. You're doing it again, Adrian said one evening as they reviewed quarterly reports in their study. It had become genuinely theirs over time, his books alongside hers, his notes integrated with her strategic analyses, their partnership reflected in every detail of the space. Doing what? That thing where you look surprised that you're still here, still valuable, still my partner. Adrian set down the financial document he'd been reviewing. After 10 months, you'd think you'd accept that this is permanent. Old habits, Lena said, but she smiled slightly. I spent 26 years learning to expect dismissal. It's hard to unlearn overnight. It's been 10 months, not overnight. At some point, you need to trust that I meant what I said. Adrian moved around the desk, settling into the chair beside hers instead of across from her. We're partners, Lena. Equals. That's not going to change because you have a bad quarter or make a strategic mistake or stop being useful in some arbitrary way. Even partners can dissolve arrangements. They can, but they don't when the partnership is working this well. Adrian gestured to the report spread across their desk. We've absorbed 87% of Chicago's organized operations. Revenue is up 42%. Federal investigations have dropped by 60% because we've cleaned up the most obviously criminal activities. The families respect us, the politicians fear us, and we're building something sustainable. He looked at her directly. That's not happening because of me alone. That's happening because of us. Because you're brilliant at this. Lena wanted to deflect the compliment, to minimize her contributions the way she'd learned to do under her father's dismissive gaze. But Adrian was right. She was good at this. Better than good. She'd discovered a talent for strategic thinking and political maneuvering that had transformed her from an overlooked daughter into one of the most powerful women in Chicago's underworld. Thank you, she said instead, letting herself accept the praise. Don't thank me for acknowledging reality. Adrian returned his attention to the reports, but there was satisfaction in his expression. Now, about the expansion into Milwaukee. Marcus thinks we should wait another quarter, but I think the opportunity is ripe now. What's your assessment? They spent the next 2 hours debating strategy with the comfortable rhythm of people who'd learned to think together, to challenge each other's assumptions without taking offense, to build something greater than either could achieve alone. It was the best part of their partnership, Lena thought. The intellectual engagement, the sense that her mind was valued as much as any other resource. When they finally finished, it was past midnight. Adrian stretched, rolling tension from his shoulders, and Lena realized she was staring at him with an expression she couldn't quite name. What? He asked, catching her gaze. Nothing, just, this isn't what I expected. What did you expect? Lena considered the question honestly. When I offered myself in Mia's place, I expected to survive, to endure, to trade one form of imprisonment for another, hopefully one that came with enough power to protect my sister. She paused. I didn't expect to actually enjoy it, to wake up excited about strategic problems, to feel like I'm building something that matters. And you do? Feel that way? Yes. Which is terrifying, honestly, because it means I have something to lose now. Before, when I was nobody, when I didn't matter, there was a strange safety in that. No one could take anything from me because I had nothing. Lena stood, moving to the window that overlooked Chicago's nighttime skyline. Now I have power, influence, a partnership that actually values me, and I keep waiting for it to be taken away. Adrian joined her at the window, his reflection visible in the glass beside hers. No one's taking anything from you, Lena. You earned this. You fought for it. You outsmarted your father, convinced the families, built alliances that are transforming how Chicago operates. His voice was quiet but certain. This is yours. No one can take it unless you let them. And if I make a mistake, if I fail at something critical, then we adapt and fix it, together. That's what partnerships mean, sharing the failures as well as the successes. Adrian's reflection smiled slightly. Besides, you haven't failed at anything yet. You're actually annoyingly competent at everything you try. Lena laughed despite herself. Annoyingly competent, that's a new compliment. It's true. Sophia's half convinced you're secretly an intelligence operative because you're too good at information gathering. Marcus thinks you're wasted on strategy and should run actual operations. James wants you to go to law school because your contract negotiations are better than his. Adrian turned to face her directly. You're not going to lose this, Lena. You're too valuable, too intelligent, too essential to what we're building. The word settled something uncertain in Lena's chest, warming the cold places that still expected dismissal and disappointment. She'd spent so long being invisible that being seen, really seen, completely valued, still felt revolutionary. Thank you, she said again, and this time it meant something deeper than gratitude for a compliment. Come on, Adrian said, breaking the moment before it could become too heavy. It's late, and we have the Castellano meeting tomorrow. You need sleep if you're going to be annoyingly competent at that too. The Castellano meeting was actually a celebration. Marco Jr. was officially taking over his father's operations, with the old man retiring to Florida with enough money to live comfortably and enough wisdom to recognize that the world had changed beyond his ability to navigate it. It was exactly the kind of peaceful transition that Lena and Adrian had been working toward, replacing violent power struggles with strategic succession planning. The party was held at one of Chicago's most exclusive venues, filled with people who represented the new order Lena and Adrian were building. Younger generation leaders who valued technology and sophistication over brute force. Political allies who'd been carefully cultivated to provide protection without being owned outright. Legitimate business owners who benefited from their influence without being implicated in their methods. Lena moved through the crowd with the confidence she'd developed over 10 months of proving herself, making connections, gathering intelligence, representing the Moretti organization with the kind of natural authority that no longer surprised her. She wore a midnight blue dress that Adrian had chosen, elegant without being flashy, powerful without being threatening. "You look different," a voice said beside her, and Lena turned to find Victoria Chen, the woman who controlled Eastern gambling territories and who'd been cautiously respectful but distant for months. "Different how?" "Like you belong here. Like you're not just Adrian Moretti's wife, but someone with actual power." Victoria sipped her champagne, studying Lena with shrewd eyes. "When you first married him, I thought you were a political pawn, someone Adrian acquired for strategic value, but wouldn't actually empower. I was wrong." "Yes, you were," Victoria laughed. "I like that. No false modesty, no pretending you haven't become exactly what you are. Dangerous." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "There's a rumor going around that you're the real strategist behind Adrian's expansion, that he provides the muscle and protection, but you're the one actually running Chicago." "That's not accurate," Lena said carefully. "We're genuine partners. He's as strategic as I am, and I'm learning operations from him. Neither of us could do this alone." "Maybe, but the families respect you, Lena. Fear you, even. That's rare for someone who's only been in this world for less than a year." Victoria's expression was serious now. "I'm telling you this because I want you to understand. You've earned your position. Whatever doubts you might have about whether you belong here, the rest of us already know the answer. You're one of us now." The observation stayed with Lena through the rest of the evening, warming something deep in her chest. She'd spent so long fighting for recognition, for value, for the right to matter, and somewhere along the way, without quite realizing it, she'd won that fight. She found Adrian near the bar, deep in conversation with Marcus about some operational detail. When he saw her, his expression shifted, something warm and almost possessive that still sent unexpected heat through Lena's body even after 10 months of marriage. "Everything all right?" he asked as she joined them. "Perfect. Victoria Chen just told me the families respect me." "Of course they do. You've earned it." Adrian dismissed Marcus with a subtle gesture, and suddenly they were alone in the crowd, standing close enough that Lena could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "You look beautiful tonight." It wasn't the first time he'd complimented her appearance, but something in the way he said it made Lena's breath catch. There was an intensity in his dark eyes that went beyond professional appreciation, beyond the careful boundaries they'd maintained in their partnership. "Thank you," she managed. "We should dance," Adrian said, offering his hand. "People expect it, and honestly, I want an excuse to hold you." The admission was so unexpected that Lena just stared at him. In 10 months of marriage, they'd been scrupulously professional with each other, partners, colleagues, friends even, but never crossing the line into anything more intimate. They had separate bedrooms, separate personal lives, a relationship built on mutual respect and strategic alliance rather than romance. But the way Adrian was looking at her now was anything but professional. "All right," Lena said, placing her hand in his. The dance floor was crowded with powerful people trying to look relaxed, but Adrian guided her to a quieter corner where they could move without being jostled. His hand settled at her waist, warm through the silk of her dress, and Lena felt hyper-aware of every point of contact between them. "This is different," she said as they began to move. "What is?" "This. Us. We've never... Lena struggled to articulate what was shifting between them. "We've been very careful to keep things professional." "We have. Because I wanted you to feel safe. To know that this partnership wasn't contingent on romantic or physical expectations." Adrian's voice was low, meant only for her. "But Lena, it's been 10 months. 10 months of working beside you, watching you grow into your power, seeing exactly how brilliant and ruthless and extraordinary you are. And somewhere along the way, professional respect became something more." Lena's heart was pounding. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I value our partnership above everything. that I wouldn't risk it for anything. But I'm also saying that if you felt the same way, if you wanted this to be more than just a strategic alliance, I'd like that, very much. You want to change our arrangement? I want to expand it, Adrian corrected. Keep everything we have, the partnership, the respect, the equality, but add something more. If you want that too. Lena thought about the past 10 months, about how her feelings toward Adrian had evolved from cautious trust to genuine respect to something warmer and more complicated. She'd noticed how her pulse quickened when he smiled at her, how she looked forward to their evening strategy sessions as much for his company as for the work, how she'd started imagining what it might be like if their marriage was real in all the ways that mattered. I want that, she admitted quietly. I've wanted it for months, but I didn't know if you... Adrian kissed her then, right there on the dance floor with half of Chicago's criminal elite watching, and it was nothing like their brief professional kiss at their wedding. This was real, deep, full of 10 months of carefully suppressed desire and genuine feeling. Lena kissed him back with equal intensity, her hands sliding up to his shoulders, anchoring herself to this moment that felt like crossing another threshold she'd never expected to reach. When they finally broke apart, Adrian's eyes were dark with want, but also with something softer. Affection, maybe, or the beginning of love. Well, he said, slightly breathless. That certainly made a statement to everyone watching. Good. Let them know this is real. Lena was aware that people were staring, that they'd just publicly transformed their relationship from strategic alliance to something genuine. No more pretending this is just business. No more pretending, Adrian agreed. He pulled her closer and they resumed dancing, but everything had changed. The careful distance was gone, replaced by intimacy that felt both new and inevitable. Where do we go from here? Lena asked against his shoulder. Wherever we want, together. Adrian's hand tightened on her waist. That's always been the beauty of this partnership. We decide together what we're building. The party continued around them, but Lena was barely aware of it. She was too focused on the man in her arms, on the partnership that had transformed into love without either of them quite realizing when it happened, on the future they were creating that looked nothing like what she'd imagined 10 months ago. When they finally left the party hours later, they went home together in a way that felt different from every other night. Adrian's hand found hers in the car, their fingers interlacing naturally, and Lena realized this was what she'd been unconsciously wanting. Not just partnership, but genuine connection. Not just respect, but affection. Not just survival, but actual happiness. Are you certain about this? Adrian asked as they entered their home. Because once we cross this line, I don't want to go back. I don't want separate bedrooms and professional distance and pretending this is just strategic alliance. I'm certain, Lena said. I've been certain for months. I was just afraid to risk what we'd built. We're not risking anything. We're adding to it. Adrian drew her close, his forehead resting against hers. I love you, Lena. I think I've loved you since that first negotiation when you offered yourself in your sister's place, and I realized you were the bravest, smartest person I'd ever met. But I wanted you to choose this freely, without pressure, when you were ready. I'm ready now. Lena kissed him again, softer this time, savoring the moment. I love you too, and I choose this. I choose us. What followed was natural and inevitable. Two people who'd been building toward this moment for 10 months, finally allowing themselves to acknowledge what had been growing between them all along. They made love with the same intensity they brought to their partnership, fierce and tender, strategic and spontaneous, perfectly matched. Afterward, lying tangled together in Adrian's bed, their bed now, Lena supposed, she felt more at peace than she'd ever been in her life. What are you thinking? Adrian asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. That I made the right choice. Every single one of them. Lena nestled closer. Offering myself in Mia's place, marrying you, destroying my father, building this empire. All of it led here. To us. To us, Lena agreed. To partnership and power and love. To everything I never knew I could have. The next morning, Lena woke to find Adrian already awake, watching her with an expression that made her smile. Regretting your choices? She teased. Never. Just appreciating them. Adrian pulled her closer. We should tell Mia about us being real, not just strategic. She'll say she knew all along. She's annoyingly perceptive like that. Lena thought about her sister, thriving at Columbia, building the life Lena had sacrificed so much to give her. I should visit her. We both should. She deserves to meet the man I actually love, not just the strategic alliance I married. I'd like that. And Lena, we should also discuss the future, our future, beyond just business operations. What did you have in mind? Adrian was quiet for a moment, his hand finding hers beneath the sheets. I want to build something lasting, not just an empire, but a legacy. With you. As genuine partners in every sense. He paused. And eventually, maybe a family. If that's something you'd want. Lena thought about what family had meant in her father's world. Currency, leverage, tools to be used and discarded. Then she thought about what it could mean in the world she and Adrian were creating. Partnership, love, building something that valued people instead of just using them. Yes, she said, I'd want that. Someday. When we're ready. No rush. We have time. Adrian kissed her forehead. All the time in the world to build exactly the life we choose. They spent that morning planning their trip to visit Mia, talking about the future with the same strategic focus they brought to business operations, but with something warmer underneath. Genuine affection, real partnership, the kind of love that grew from respect and trust rather than obligation or expectation. When Lena finally called her sister that afternoon, Mia answered with her usual enthusiasm. Lena, I was just thinking about you. How are things? Good. Really good, actually. Lena glanced at Adrian, who was reviewing contracts at their desk, but listening with obvious interest. Adrian and I are coming to New York next weekend. We want to take you to dinner. Both of you? Together? Mia's voice shifted, becoming knowing. This isn't just a business trip, is it? No, it's personal. Lena smiled. We want you to meet him. Really meet him, as my husband, instead of just my strategic alliance. Oh my God, Lena, you love him. Mia's squeal of delight was so loud that Adrian could probably hear it across the room. I knew it. I knew this would happen. You can't live with someone that intelligent and attractive and decent and not eventually fall in love. Yes, thank you, I get it. You're very wise. Lena was laughing despite herself. Will you have dinner with us? Of course. I want to hear everything. How it happened, when you realized, whether he's actually as wonderful as he seems or if he's secretly terrible. He's wonderful, Lena said, meeting Adrian's eyes across the study. Better than I ever imagined when I made that choice to take your place. You didn't take my place, Lena. You chose yourself. And I'm so glad you found someone who values you the way you deserve. Mia's voice turned serious. You sound happy. Really, genuinely happy. I haven't heard you sound like this since... Actually, I don't know if I've ever heard you sound like this. I am happy, Lena admitted. Happier than I knew was possible. After she hung up, Adrian joined her on the couch, pulling her against his side with comfortable familiarity. She's excited to meet me, he observed. She's excited that I'm happy, that this turned into something real. Lena laced her fingers through his. She spent our whole childhood watching me sacrifice for her. I think she's relieved I finally found something that's mine. Ours, Adrian corrected gently. This is ours, Lena. Everything we're building, everything we have, it's shared. The trip to New York happened the following weekend, and Lena felt nervous in a way she hadn't experienced since those first meetings with Chicago's families. This was different. This was introducing the man she loved to the sister she'd sacrificed everything to protect, and somehow that felt more significant than any business negotiation. Mia met them at an upscale restaurant near Columbia, and Lena watched her sister's face cycle through surprise and approval as she took in Adrian's genuine warmth, his obvious affection for Lena, the way he treated her like an equal partner rather than an acquisition. So you're the man who married my sister, Mia said, after the initial pleasantries, studying Adrian with the same perceptive intelligence that ran in their family. I'm the man lucky enough that your sister agreed to marry me, Adrian corrected with a slight smile. And who spent the past 10 months discovering exactly how extraordinary she is. Good answer. Mia's expression softened. You make her happy? I can see it. She's different than she was, more confident, more powerful, more herself. Lena did that herself. I just provided the circumstances where she could thrive. He's being modest, Lena interjected. He gave me actual partnership when everyone else in our world would have just made me decorative. That made all the difference. They spent the dinner talking, about Mia's studies, about the empire Lena and Adrian were building, about the future they were creating together. Lena watched her sister relax as she realized that Adrian genuinely valued Lena, that this wasn't manipulation or control, but real partnership and love. "I'm glad you found each other," Mia said as the evening wound down. "When I think about what almost happened, what Father tried to do to me, what you sacrificed to stop it, it could have ended so badly, but instead it ended with you finding actual happiness. That feels like justice somehow." "It feels like choice," Lena said. "I chose to protect you. I chose to partner with Adrian. I chose to destroy Father's empire. And every choice led me here, to exactly where I'm supposed to be." After they said goodbye to Mia and returned to their hotel, Adrian pulled Lena into his arms with the easy affection that had developed between them over the past months. "Your sister's wonderful," he said. "I can see why you were willing to sacrifice everything for her." "It wasn't sacrifice in the end. It was choosing something better." Lena looked up at him. "If I hadn't made that choice, I'd still be invisible in my father's house. I'd never have discovered what I was capable of. I'd never have found you." "Then I'm grateful for every choice that led us here." Adrian kissed her softly. "To our partnership, to our love, to the empire we're building together. To everything we choose," Lena added, "and everything we're becoming." The months that followed were the happiest of Lena's life. She and Adrian continued building their empire, but now there was love woven through the partnership, genuine affection alongside the strategic thinking. They shared a bedroom, shared their lives, shared everything in ways that made their alliance stronger, rather than complicating it. The families adapted quickly to the shifted dynamic, recognizing that Lena and Adrian were genuinely united rather than just politically connected. It made them more formidable, more impossible to divide or manipulate. A year after their wedding, Lena received a letter from her father. The prison chaplain had delivered it with the explanation that Dominic Varelli was serving his sentence quietly, had given up his appeals, and wanted to communicate one final message to his daughter. Lena almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity, and maybe the need for closure, made her open it instead. The letter was brief, written in her father's precise handwriting. "You were right. I underestimated you. I saw a daughter where I should have seen a strategist, a weakness where there was strength, a tool where there was a threat. You destroyed me more thoroughly than any rival ever could, and you did it while I was still convinced you were insignificant. That takes remarkable intelligence and patience. I taught you to be ruthless without meaning to, and you wielded that ruthlessness against me with perfect precision. I suppose I should be proud, though mostly I'm just impressed. You've become exactly what I tried to prevent: powerful, respected, impossible to control. I hope it was worth the cost." Lena read the letter twice, then handed it to Adrian without comment. "He's trying to take credit," Adrian observed after scanning the contents, "suggesting he taught you everything, that your victory is somehow his achievement. I know, but he's also admitting I won, that I outsmarted him, that I became more powerful than he ever allowed himself to imagine." Lena took the letter back, studying her father's words. "That's enough. I don't need his approval or his pride. I just needed him to acknowledge that I mattered. What will you do with it?" Lena considered for a moment, then carefully folded the letter and placed it in a drawer of her desk. "Keep it, as a reminder of where I came from and how far I've traveled. But it doesn't change anything. He's my past. You're my future." "We're your future," Adrian corrected, pulling her into his arms. "Everything we're building together." 2 years after their wedding, Lena stood in the penthouse apartment she and Adrian had bought overlooking Lake Michigan, watching the sun set over the city they controlled together. Chicago gleamed below her, beautiful and brutal, and theirs in ways that still filled her with satisfaction. She heard Adrian enter before she saw him, his footsteps familiar and welcome. "Thinking about how far you've come?" he asked, joining her at the window. "Thinking about how far we've come," Lena corrected. 2 years ago, I was nobody. Invisible, surviving on the margins of my father's world. Now you're one of the most powerful women in Chicago, respected by families who've been in this world for generations. Building an empire that's changing how organized crime operates in this country. Adrian's arm came around her waist, pulling her against his side. "You've earned every bit of it." "We've earned it, together." Lena leaned into his warmth, comfortable in ways she'd never been with anyone else. "I couldn't have done this alone." "You could have, but you didn't have to." Adrian kissed the top of her head. That's what partnership means, sharing the burdens and the victories. I love you, Lena said, the words still feeling new and precious even after a year of saying them regularly. I love you too, more than I knew was possible when we started this. They stood together as the sun finished setting, painting Chicago's skyline in shades of gold and crimson. Lena thought about the bargain she'd made to save her sister, about the partnership she'd built from strategic necessity, about the love she'd found in the most unexpected place. She'd offered herself in Mia's place, expecting survival, at best. Instead, she'd found power, partnership, love, and a future that was entirely hers to shape. Her father had tried to sell her like currency. Adrian had valued her like the brilliant strategist she was. The difference between those two choices had transformed Lena's entire life, had given her everything she'd never dared to hope for. What are you thinking about? Adrian asked, studying her expression. That I made the right choice. Every single one of them, from that first moment in my father's study to right now. Lena turned in his arms, meeting his dark eyes. I chose to protect Mia. I chose to partner with you. I chose to claim my power instead of just surviving. And every choice led me here, to this life, to this love, to this partnership that's become everything. No regrets? None, not one. Lena smiled, genuine and free in ways that would have been impossible 2 years ago. I chose survival and found love instead. I chose strategy and discovered genuine partnership. I chose to matter, and I became more powerful than my father ever allowed himself to imagine. She kissed Adrian softly. I chose my future, and it's extraordinary. It is, Adrian agreed, and it's only getting started. We have decades ahead of us to build, to grow, to create something that lasts beyond just us. Decades of partnership, decades of love, decades of choosing each other every single day. Yes, Adrian said simply. Exactly that. As night fell over Chicago, Lena stood with the man she loved in the empire they'd built together, surrounded by power she'd earned and partnership she'd chosen, and felt completely, genuinely, impossibly happy. She'd started this journey as a sacrifice, the bargain no sister should have to pay. But somewhere along the way, sacrifice had transformed into choice, and choice had become power, and power had evolved into love. The overlooked daughter had become a force to be reckoned with. The invisible girl had claimed her place in the world. The woman who'd offered herself to save her sister had discovered she was worth saving too. And in choosing herself, in claiming power, demanding respect, building partnership, and allowing love, Lena had finally found the one thing she'd been searching for her entire life without realizing it. She mattered. Not because someone else said so, not because she'd earned it through sacrifice or survival, but because she'd chosen to matter, had fought for that right, had built a life where her intelligence and strength and strategic brilliance were valued instead of threatening. The bargain she'd made to save Mia had saved them both. Mia from a terrible marriage, and Lena from a life of invisible insignificance. And now, standing in the future she'd claimed with both hands, Lena Moretti smiled and held tighter to the man who'd helped her become exactly who she was always meant to be: powerful, valued, loved, free.